I wish to warmly welcome the Secretary General, His Excellency, Mr. Guterres, and give him the floor.
Madam President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I thank the United States Presidency of the Security Council for organizing this briefing, which recognizes the importance of tackling corruption as part of our efforts to maintain international peace and security. Corruption is present in all countries, rich and poor, north and south, developed and developing. Numbers show the startling scope of the challenge. The World Economic Forum estimates that the cost of corruption is at least $2.6 trillion or 5% of global gross domestic product. And according to the World Bank, businesses and individuals pay more than $1 trillion in bribes each year. Corruption robs schools, hospitals, and others of vitally needed funds. It rots institutions as public officials enrich themselves or turn a blind eye to criminality. It deprives people of their rights, drives away foreign investment, and despoils the environment. Corruption breeds disillusion with government and governance, and is often at the root of political dysfunction and social disunity. The poor and vulnerable suffer disproportionately, and impunity compounds the problem. Corruption can be a trigger for conflict. As conflict rages, corruption prospers. And even if conflict ebbs, corruption can impede recovery. Corruption thrives and thrives on the breakdown of political and social institutions. These institutions are never more in crisis than in times of conflict. Corruption is linked to many forms of instability and violence, such as the illicit trafficking in arms, drugs, and people. The connections among corruption, terrorism, and violent extremism have been repeatedly recognized by the Security Council and General Assembly. Assets stolen through corruption can be used to finance further crimes, including violent extremist and terrorist acts. Large-scale corruption surveys conducted by the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime found that bribery of public officials was particularly high in areas affected by conflict. In conflict situations, stakeholders such as anti-corruption commissions, civil society, and the media may be weakened or hindered in their essential work. And the consequences of corruption in times of conflict can be especially devastating, as they can affect the most basic needs and exacerbate hunger and poverty. Excellencies, member states must be on the front lines in the fight against corruption. It is especially important to build up the capacity of national anti-corruption commissions and prosecutorial efforts. Governments can also enhance anti-corruption efforts by ensuring independent judiciaries, a vibrant civil society, freedom of the media, and effective whistleblower protection. The international community can complement these efforts by working more effectively against money laundering, tax evasion, and illicit financial flows that have prived countries of much-needed resources that feed further corruption. As members of the Council know, I've called for heightened efforts to prevent conflict and to address risks early before they escalate. In that spirit, combating corruption and addressing governance challenges which lie at the root of many conflicts must be a component of preventive approaches. This is an opportunity to build a solid foundation of trust and accountability and increase society's resilience to crises. In peace operations, our engagement should be designed and implemented with a clear anti-corruption lens to reinforce a culture of accountability and respect for the rule of law. At its January summit this year, the African Union launched the observance of 2018 as African Anti-Corruption Year. And I'm pleased to note that anti-money laundering efforts in Nigeria and Tunisia have seen some funds returned. As I said to the General Assembly last May in marking the 15th anniversary of the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, the role of the UN is crucial. There are several ways the organization can support member states, from sharing good practices to supporting efforts to strengthen national anti-corruption institutions. And the International Commission Against Impunity in Guatemala is a case in point. Excellencies, before the adoption of the Convention, there was no global instrument to criminalize corruption or to recover stolen proceeds. Now the Convention has 186 states parties, and the crime of corruption is on the books of nearly every country in the world. The Convention's robust peer review mechanisms have served as a global framework for international cooperation to strengthen prevention, to disrupt money laundering schemes, to return stolen proceeds from foreign banks, and other necessary actions. I encourage all Member States to bring greater resolve to its implementation. And let us also take profit of advances in technology, which give us an opportunity to massively expand public participation in governance and to increase accountability. At the same time, we know that conventions and legal measures must be complemented by strong leadership that elevates corruption as a concern and makes it a priority for action. People across the world continue to express outrage at the corruption of their leaders and at how deeply corruption is embedded in societies. They are rightly calling for political establishments to operate with transparency and accountability or make way for those who will. I call on leaders everywhere to listen, to nurture a culture of integrity, and to empower citizens to do their part at the grassroots. We must all do more to fight corruption, strengthen governments, and build trustworthy institutions that can ensure probity and progress for all. Thank you.